Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Waffles and Miles podcast. I am Alicia Miles, and today is a wonderful day. And I'm excited because I'm always excited. I'll say that at the beginning of every episode. I'm always excited because I get to talk to people that I have grown up with, new people that I've met, but to still have relationships and friendships with people that I literally was in elementary school with until now is downright amazing.
Yeah.
And the fact that we still talk to each other like we never left. And even though life has happened and things have occurred, somehow or another, we always still find a way to support each other. And so I'm so grateful today to have my guest, Miss Angela Williams Dunnigan. Did I say the last name right?
Yes, you did. Very good.
All right. So how are you today?
I am great. I'm
You
great.
look
How are you?
great, girl. I gotta say, marriage or whatever you're doing is treating you well.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So I was really excited for a couple of reasons because I have been looking for I have been looking for newlywed to actually be on a podcast. And to me, anybody who's been married for less than 5 years is a newlywed.
Yeah.
Only because I know what happens at 5 years. At about 5 to 7 years.
Now, don't scare me.
No, I'm not. I'm going to actually encourage you. So that's the reason for the podcast, is because I definitely want to encourage you, but nothing bad happens. There's a change that just happens, right?
Mhm.
And I'll talk to you about that. But the topic for today is keeping others out of your marriage.
Yeah.
And when I thought of this topic, it wasn't so much that I was concerned about being all secret and not wanting to share things that are happening in your marriage. Like, that wasn't my thought process. My thought process was keeping the wrong people out of your marriage, and
Right.
when to discuss things publicly, when to keep things to yourselves. But most importantly, really understanding what the vows mean when we cling, when he leaves his, mother and father and clings to his wife, what that really means. And I'm glad that you decided to help me with this topic, because I think you will understand it not only from watching your parents. I think that was definitely a good example of that. And so I didn't have that. So I wanted to be able to talk to someone who saw, whether it was good, bad, indifferent, you saw your parents cling to
Right.
each other. And so I definitely want to talk about what you've learned from them, and most importantly, from your mom. Since the passing of your father, I want to know, what have you seen happen to her? Whether she has her moments, of course, I would imagine, but
Yeah.
has she, blossomed, or has her life just like, I wanna kind of tap into that, and I would probably love to talk to her at some point about where she is. So how is she doing? How's your family doing?
So overall, the family we're doing well. Mom, I tell everybody she is not the same Dorothy that she was
Okay.
when my dad was alive.
Okay. Okay.
She's gotten a little feisty.
Okay. Okay.
But she's really enjoying life. Of course, he died right at the end of 2019, and
Mm-hmm.
then we had these ideas of how we were going to bring our, do things together and get her
Mm-hmm.
out of the house. But of course, then COVID hit
Mm-hmm.
a few months later.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we've gotten past that, she's been, out with us, going on vacations. We got vacations planned with her. So it's different, but it's exciting.
Okay, awesome. And I think she's setting an example for you
Mm.
and your sisters, most definitely. I mean, of course she's done that all her life, but
Oh yes, for
she's
sure.
really showing you, hey, this is what it could look like. After
Yes,
being married for so many years, this is what it could look like. And so
yes.
just showing you how the preparation and how life doesn't stop, I think is really awesome. So I definitely want to make sure that toward the end, we kind of talk about that a little bit, but let's just go ahead and jump into it. So, you've been married for 3 years. As of
Mhm.
April, it was 3 years, right?
As of April, it was 3 years, yes.
Okay, 3 years. Um, so what would you say? And you married later. You married
Oh,
much
yes.
later. Yes, your daughter was basically grown, right?
Yes.
Or right getting ready to be grown right out of high school. Um, and so what's your husband's tell me his first name?
Keith.
Keith. Okay, okay.
Mhm.
All right, because I want to call him Keith. I don't want to call him Mr. Dunnigan the whole time. We talk about you, Keith. So I want to start by asking you, in the 3 years that you guys have been together, and I'm pretty sure you dated longer, but in the 3 years that you guys have been together, is there anything that you have learned about yourself or discovered about yourself that you didn't know existed prior to getting married?
Ooh, yes, I would say I think when people meet me, they think that I would naturally be like the touchy-feely one,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I am a nurturer,
Mm-hmm.
but he's really more the affectionate one.
Mm-hmm.
So and I didn't really know how much of a non-affectionate person until we got together because that's really like his love language, is like just,
Mm-hmm.
having that quality time, but also like that personal touch.
Touch.
And I didn't realize that I was not that person
Mm-hmm.
until I got with him. So that was very eye-opening for me.
Yes. So what a lot of people may not know is that people used to get us confused when we were in school. They were always, they were always, they were always mix us up. And so
Yeah.
it doesn't listen. So it doesn't surprise me that you say you're not touchy feely because that's actually something I discovered when I got married. My husband is the more affectionate one. He wants to touch and grope everything, and I'm not that person. And it's frustrating for him. Honestly,
Right.
very frustrating because I'm like, don't touch me, like get off of me. But
Well,
I
and
think,
and to my husband's defense, I don't know if it was because I was single for so long, and so I
mm,
wasn't used to I was used to my
oh,
daughter, like, kinda clinging sometimes, but I wasn't used to, like, a grown person touching and clinging.
totally different.
So it was just different,
Yeah.
and I think I hurt his feelings probably a couple of
Okay.
times, like, "Do you have to
Mhm,
rub?"
mhm,
Every time.
mhm. Yes.
But now it's just what he does, so it's all good. We're good.
Yes. And it's honestly something that we would miss if they didn't do it. Hey, we think that we don't like it, and then the moment it doesn't happen, it's like, why you like, what's wrong
Yeah.
with
He
you?
must not be feeling well.
So
Right, right.
yeah, absolutely. So I totally get that. And I think, that's discovery really helps you determine how to govern yourself in your relationship and not, you have to make adjustments so that, you may not always be pleasing to your spouse, but you do have to make some adjustments here and
Oh,
there.
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that is something that you would actually, especially when you got, like you said, a grown person around you, you gonna figure out real quick how you okay. All right. So that's really that's interesting. I'm glad you said that. So thinking about while you guys were dating and not wanting it to be as I don't want to say private, but that's actually what I mean. You don't want a lot of people. You want to get to know the person that you hoping that you will spend the rest of your life with, and so you don't want
Right.
a lot of people trying to interrupt your space and ask you so many questions, and they want to know this and who his folks are and all this stuff. You haven't even figured that part out, and so it's like
Right.
you don't want people to dig too deep into your space. You really want to try to create a strong unit before you invite people in.
Mhm.
But like you mentioned, you guys are much older when you decided to get married. Did you decide that, hey, we really need our space? Like we really need to explore each other. We need to know each other. Let's not bring our family and friends into this yet. Because I'm gonna be honest, you popped up married. I was like, what the hell? Where did this come from? I had no clue. So I'm and so so I'm just
I
asking.
did. I popped up with a man. Angela got a man.
Oh, so, but I love it though because it's nobody's business, and so I want to know: did you guys decide, hey, let's just take this thing easy. Let's get to know each other first before we bring a whole bunch of people into our relationship.
We did because what a lot of people, well, I don't even think my family knows this, but we actually met on a dating app.
Okay. Okay.
And so we chose to keep that to ourselves
Absolutely.
because,
Yeah.
family and friends, a couple of my friends knew that we had met on a dating app, but my family did not because I know they were like, what? There's crazy people on the apps and, they're going to do this. They
Mhm.
just have all these conspiracy theories. So
Mhm.
I felt it was best
Mhm.
to keep that to ourselves because then, everybody approaches our relationship already like being judgmental, like, oh, they met
Mhm.
on, they
Yeah.
met on a dating app and he must be this or she must been that, and we didn't want to get into that. So just
Right.
from the beginning, we kept that to ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, the good thing with him, I would say he's probably the more mature in the relationship
Okay.
because this is a second marriage for
Okay.
him. So he, learned from his first marriage, like
Mhm.
what not to do, what to do. But
Mhm.
there are still things because I, remind him like I'm a different person than that person that you were married to.
Right.
So there are
Right.
things that you have to learn about me, and we just took that time to get to know each other. I made it very clear that if he was not intentional, if he was not serious, do not waste my time.
Right.
Because I was already at a point in life, I had gone to nursing school. I had already started my career,
Mhm.
and was very happy in my career.
Mhm.
As you said, my daughter, she was the second half of high school. So,
Mhm.
I'm focusing on getting her finished with high school, get her into college. And so I didn't want anybody to come in and be a disruption. But
Oh,
I
definitely.
think it
Mhm.
was it was good that, I we just took that time to get to know each other and keep people out of it. Like I didn't, I wasn't like you said, I wasn't posting a lot of pictures, like some people do and put it all on
Yeah.
Facebook and
Yeah.
Instagram and everybody's trying to figure out who he is and where did he
Mhm.
come from and
Mhm.
so I think we were very intentional in that.
Good. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I wish more people would do that. Because I
Mhm.
don't want to see one week y'all all happy and hugging up and booed up, and then the next week he get on my nerves and he to get. I mean, I would much
Right.
rather you take the time to figure out who you're with versus trying to just let everybody in the world into your space. And you made a good point. Social media and the judgmental aspect of how people choose to be together is a huge is it's like a thing. I don't why would
Right,
you care
right.
about how somebody living their life? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. But
Right.
it happens. And so I'm glad that you guys decided to um really, I guess the word I'm looking for is nurture that space and that
Mhm.
time to, guard it. I really think
Mhm.
that's important. And you're right. Even though we love our family, they are judgmental. They love you, they want to protect you. And so
Yeah.
they
And
automatically
you
think you're making
remember
the
now, Daddy was a preacher, so
exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, I just think about it like, oh Lord, and she's on her daddy.
yeah.
But I think no matter what, I do feel like they would have definitely encouraged whatever it is that you wanted.
Mhm.
Albeit they might think it's the wrong thing. If it's
Right.
something that you wanted, I think they
Mhm.
probably would have been, very much. And I would imagine now that you guys have courted and been married, that they trusted your decision to be who you wanted to be with.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so that's good. So when we talk about keeping others out of our marriage, I know the first thing that I like to do when at least the first 5 to 7 years, and maybe even maybe a little bit now, not a whole lot,
Mhm.
a little bit. I have a tendency that when there are problems, I run to my mama.
Oh, yes.
I want my mama to fix everything. And
Mhm.
mind you, she don't know here, there, nowhere about what's going on. But if a baby come running, talking about I'm hurt or I'm in pain, they want to go to war. And so I know you have a close relationship with your mom and your sisters. And I'm curious as to whether or not you have decided, you know what, I'm a big girl. I don't need to run to my mom or my family whenever we have our problems, or have you said, you know what, she would know. So let me
Mhm.
go and talk to my mama if I'm having issues that I can't seem to work out with my spouse. I think that might be the only person that I would let in my space is
Right.
my mom. So talk to me about the people that you trust with your marriage. If you have a small circle of friends, it's just your family. I do think we need to have people that we can trust with our marriages and the issues and things we might go through.
So my circle is small. It's really my family.
Mhm,
Because within my family, everybody was married but me. So,
mhm.
mom and daddy were
Remember that.
married 58
Mhm,
years. My oldest sister has been married 30 something years.
mhm,
Brothers right at 30, and Mike and Denise or
mhm,
Cherie, depending on how you call
mhm,
her, they've been, I
mhm.
think, together like 20 something years. So
Oh my, has it been? Oh my God, yes, it has. Okay, yes, okay.
So, I have a lot of I pull my experience from them. So I did not go into, marriage thinking that it's going to be all roses and, just skipping down the street. But I do go to them now. I've learned
Mhm, mhm.
just for some things.
Yes.
And I say that
Yes.
because my husband, it was like a year into our marriage. We had just left my mom's house, and we had this big blow up in the car, like very big blow up.
Mhm,
And I felt like he was being very disrespectful in some
mhm.
of the things that he was saying because he got a slick tongue sometimes.
They all do. Right, right.
But I was like, oh no, 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 we're not doing this.
Yeah.
And so we were like a little bit around the corner from my mom's house.
Mhm.
And I got out the car and I said, I'm walking back to my mama's house.
Oh,
And I said, I'm about to call her. And so he's like, don't do it. Don't call.
no, don't do it.
He's like, please just get back in the car. I was like, nope, no, you've gone past the limit. And I called her, and I knew in that moment, I guess in the back of my mind, I knew that making that phone call was going to change the trajectory of things.
Yes, ma'am.
But I felt like I just wanted, to let her know, like, to get her guidance.
Mhm,
And of course, I called her, then she called my
mhm.
sister called my brother-in-law. It
Right.
just became a thing.
Uh-huh.
And it just kind of blew up. And then everybody was like mad at my husband. And, my
Mhm.
mom was blowing up his phone, like, he gonna talk to me today. He is not he is not going to be talking to my daughter like this, and that's my
I'm
baby.
telling you, you better not mess with folks' children.
And so by the time I got back to her house, my sister and brother-in-law had picked me up, and my brother-in-law had words with my husband, and it was just, Alicia, it was a thing. It was a thing. Um, by the time we got back to my mom's house, I was like, in my mind, I'm thinking, "Ooh, I probably shouldn't have made that call," because now it's just like it's now bigger than I even anticipated it
Right,
being. And
right,
now that I've calmed down, like I could talk through it, but that was that was a learning lesson
right.
for me, because although I know that they were well intentioned and they had my best interest at heart. It could have ended our marriage,
Yes.
honestly, if I had, everybody was in the heat of the moment, everybody was upset, and if I had continued to stay in that frame of mind, we
Mhm.
probably would have ended our marriage
You would
over
have felt
something
like
that
an
was stupid.
outsider. He would have felt like an outsider, like he always
Yeah.
had to defend. Yeah. You're
Yeah.
right.
And it took some time to even for him to rebuild, because he with the relationships with my family, because he was then uncomfortable or felt like, they were looking at him some type of way or didn't want him
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
So we went through a few months of even having to go through, that phase of it. So
Right.
now today, like, no, I'm not gonna pick up the phone and call
Mhm.
him,
Mhm.
call mama.
Now you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Now I have learned, but of course, mothers they can always tell what if something is on their child's mind. So
They can.
maybe we have had a little dispute or a little spat, and I go to her house, and she's like, "You okay? You and Katie you all had a fight?" It's like, "No, mom, no, we're good."
Like, leave that alone. Leave it alone. I think,
Right, we're good.
and honestly, I remember the first time. I mean, we had been years into our marriage, and we had a huge argument like that, and it was so bad. It was so bad that I called my mom, and I think I ran in the house crying, and she almost had
Mhm.
a panic attack. She was just like, "What the hell is going on? And why are you crying?" And I couldn't even explain what had happened. And she was just like, "I need to call him." No, I had to literally like, please don't call,
Right.
please don't call." I had to tell her not to call because she was like, "No, I want to talk." No, no.
Uh-huh.
I just needed a place to vent, and I'm glad you're my safe space, but don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't call. It's gonna
Yeah.
make it worse. So, but I really, when I will say this, because I really feel like those are the types of things that happen in marriage that, like you said, it could break it. But
Mhm.
knowing that if you love someone and you know that, hey, this is just a moment in time where we just could not see eye to eye, and we just could not figure out how to navigate through how our feelings, it's
Mhm.
easy for us to just walk away. Like that would have been a perfect moment. Like you said, you marriage was like a addition. You were happy,
Right.
like with what you had. There was nothing. This was just an addition to your life that you had already created, and having him there
Mhm.
definitely is a beautiful thing. But if I had to go back, I would be fine. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I think it's very important that you guys do continue to have those moments where you're uncomfortable. And this is what
Mhm.
I meant by the 5 to 7 years. It's usually around the time when a lot of change happens. So, as you see Josie graduate from college and form her own relationships and things like that, that's going to enter another dynamic for you as her mother, and him as, maybe a stepfather. I'm not sure if that's how he relates to her, but,
Mhm.
being a part of her life, that's going to be a different dynamic for you guys. The passing of our parents will be another phase within that time frame where we'll have to learn how to adjust to each other. So it's
Right.
usually or changing careers or things of that, promotions. Um, it's all those things that make every 5 to 7 years, there's a cycle that changes, and we either are going to grow together with it or we're going to grow apart. And
Mhm.
so being able to have those challenges in your marriage, I will tell you, are the best spaces to communicate more and learn more about each other. Because
Yeah.
what you thought might have been disrespectful, he was like, "I say this all the time." This ain't no big deal. Like, what's your problem? So
Right.
I think that there's oftentimes, and as he continues to learn and grow, men are a little bit different. We tend to progress a little bit faster. They take their time. We don't like it, but they take their time with how
Mhm.
they, grasp and understand things. So did you ever have a conversation with your mom about that incident afterwards, or did y'all just kind of just let it go? Or did you and your husband have a conversation about it, about how that went down?
So, I don't think I ever went back and had a full conversation with my mom about the situation because, once my husband and I got kind of decided we're not going to let this end our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to just work harder at communicating and,
Mm-hmm.
understanding each other. I didn't really feel like there was a need to talk to my mom at that
Okay.
time.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Also, again, because mama kinda riled things up a little.
Right.
No, I just wanted to, kind of leave that where it is. I
Mhm.
will say that that incident, although it was bad in the moment, it's probably one of the things that has helped strengthen our relationship, because we do talk about it. We still talk about it,
Mhm.
even though it's been a couple of years. But we
Mhm.
made a decision after that incident that we were not going to just walk away from this marriage, that we,
Right.
truly do
Right.
love each other and respect each other,
Mhm.
and that we were committed to our marriage vows and to each other.
Mhm.
And so we have talked about communication and, things that I need. Like when we're having an issue, he likes to talk about things like right then, like he wants to resolve right then, whereas I process things
Mhm.
and I'll tell him, "L- let's I don't want to talk about this right now. Like let it go.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
stop, like let's stop pushing the button. Let
Yeah.
me just process it and then we can talk about it later." And so we have to meet in the middle because sometimes there are things that we do need to
Right.
resolve sooner rather than later. So it has been like a respect thing in that aspect as well. And then in general, our foundation for our marriage is, our love for Christ and for people.
Mhm.
And so, that strengthened our spiritual relationship,
Yeah.
our individual relationship with God, but
Mhm.
also how we view spirituality and, going to church and Bible study and,
Mhm.
all of that for our lives. So it's definitely helped. I think that was, like I said, in the moment it was bad, but it's
Mhm.
ended up being one of the best things that happened for us.
And they usually are. It's funny how that happens, but sometimes the worst things that we go through should be the catalyst for like, I don't want to go back to that space again. Like I don't want
Right.
to ever be in that moment again that we can't just stop what we're doing and focus on each other.
Right.
It definitely helps in the long run. Like you said, you guys made a decision that this is how we're gonna treat ourselves and our marriage going forward. Um, like I mentioned earlier, you married later. And I wonder how much of the experiences that you had and the experiences that he had, and him knowing what he didn't want to do again. Like, he did knew I'm not gonna do this, I'm not gonna do that. I know I want this, I know I want that. Did you guys, while you were dating, have an opportunity to discuss those things? Like, hey, look, I don't like the temperature below 75, or I don't like no. Believe it or not, those things are like important. Little small things do make a difference. But the point I'm trying to make is, did you guys have an opportunity while you were dating to really talk about what your deal breakers were, what your boundaries were, but most importantly, what your desires were for for a partner? Did y'all take
Mhm.
the time to talk about that? Was it guided by counseling? How did you guys get to a point where you're like, okay, now it's time to get married? Because we talked about these things.
So we did talk about, our boundaries, our deal breakers, things that we wanted, or things that we hope for our relationship.
Mhm.
For me, from day one, I told him, if you would like another child, because he has two children from his
Mhm.
previous marriage and they're grown.
Mhm.
I said, if you want another child, it's not gonna come from me because
It ain't happening.
because I know that those things are are very important. And he would talk
Yeah.
about like little babies and I love children too, but I said, Josie is about to graduate from high school and I just cannot see myself starting all over again.
Right.
And so it that was a for sure a deal breaker for me, but for him, we kind of joke about that still now, but for him, because of things that had happened in his previous marriage, he was very upfront about who I was friends with and who I was, who are you listening to? Like, don't let other people influence, our
Okay.
relationship.
Mhm.
Also because of things that had happened in his marriage, he was concerned about other people that I may have had dealings with in the past that I was still communicating with, but on like on a friendly basis.
Mhm.
And, at first I was like, sir, I'm 40. Like I cannot help that you came
Yeah.
in later in my life.
Mhm.
But I did see that it did bother him, and I finally like understood what he was, where he was coming from in that perspective. And so, out of respect, yes, some communication and things had to be cut from
Mhm.
some people. Because I
Mhm.
felt like I didn't want to lose this man for people who didn't see my value in the past. So
Right, right.
you're gone, like bye, you're gone. So
Mhm.
but yeah, we did definitely talk about that. And again, because we were older, and we were very intentional. I will say that when we went on our first date, my husband told me he was gonna marry me, and I was like, okay,
Mm.
it sounds good. That sounds good. But you
Hey,
got to
what?
prove some things. So he was always very intentional and always said that he was going to marry me. But
Okay. Okay.
after so long, I was like, listen, we're both above, older than 40. And if we're going to get married, like if we're really going to get married, we need to get married because you want to be with me. I know I want to be with you. There's no need in just having time go by. And then we did move in together before we got married. And I was like, I'm not going to get comfortable with
Mhm.
just you being my roommate and we just going on. And then 1 year passes, 5 years passes, 10 year passes, and then we're still not married. So,
Right, right.
um, I looked at him and I was like, if we're gonna do it, but the date that we got married, like that week before, I said, because we did go through counseling. So we
Okay.
did get counseling.
Okay.
And the minister that counseled us, he had told us, like, whenever you all are ready to have a ceremony, I'll be glad to do it at my church.
Mhm.
Well, again, this was in April of 2020, in the middle of COVID. And so
Mhm.
people were not really having church. They were only having drive-up service. But one day I got up and I said, hey, we still gonna get married. And I said, can you reach out to Pastor Edwards and tell him we're ready? Figure out what we need to do, what Sunday we can come to
Yeah.
get married. And so he did. My husband reached out to him and he said, oh, you all can come this Sunday. We're gonna have drive up service, and then we'll go in the church and we'll have a little ceremony for you all.
Okay.
So that's what it was. There was no planning.
But I love it
It was
though.
we just
Yeah.
went to the church and there was no one there that I knew. No family. My
Wait,
daughter
wait,
wasn't there.
wait,
His
wait,
kids weren't there.
wait. I was with you until you said there was nobody there that you knew.
There were it was supposed to be a drive up service,
Uh-huh.
but that particular Sunday it stormed really bad.
Okay.
So they moved the service inside because again it was COVID. Everybody was nervous
Uh-huh.
about being in close
Inside.
proximity
Uh-huh.
to
Uh-huh.
everyone. And so they moved the church service inside. And my family was very nervous about, COVID and getting sick. And,
Uh-huh.
mama, of course, is older. And so we
Uh-huh.
didn't want to expose her. So I knew that they were not going to come. I didn't want them to come because I didn't want anybody to get sick. Not that I
Right.
didn't want anybody to be there
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah,
support
yeah,
me.
yeah.
But yeah, I laugh about that. Like I had a COVID wedding with people I did not know. Some lady was playing the piano. I don't know who that lady is. The minister's daughter recorded the service.
Oh, I love this story. I had no clue, but I love it. I think that's just the most amazing thing. So, I
So talk about keeping people out of your marriage.
yes. Oh my God. So when you think about like how the marriage began, when you think about
Mhm.
how things began, but let me ask you this because how long did you guys date before you got married? It wasn't long, was it?
It was not quite 2 years.
Okay.
We started dating in December of 2017.
Okay. Okay. So
And
did your
then
parents, so did everybody get to meet him and all that stuff prior to you guys
Mhm,
getting married? Okay. 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 Okay.
mhm. Yeah, so I kind of kept him to myself. They heard me talking about him. And then I remember we had my sister came into town from Louisiana, and so we had, stuff we were cooking out and just having family time.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "This is a good time for you to come over and meet everybody else." He had met my parents. I brought him over one
Oh, okay.
Sunday.
Okay. Okay.
And
Okay.
so he had talked to my dad and talked to my mom, and then he came over and met everybody else. And so,
Okay.
of course, they were all like, "Oh, this must be serious."
Okay.
Because Angela does not ever, we don't ever meet anybody, of Angela's. I was like, "Yes, this is
Mhm.
serious." So
Yeah.
this is a big step. And then we got engaged at the end of September of 2019.
Okay.
And so we knew we were going to have like a courthouse wedding,
Mhm. Mhm.
but
Mhm.
it just so happened that the day we went and got our marriage license was the day that my dad died. So of course that
Mhm.
just
Yeah. It
put
delayed
that off.
everything. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will tell you that when you said that you kept them to yourself, around us when my husband and I were dating, I remember meeting I think it was his great grandmother.
Mhm.
And he took me to meet her, which I didn't know where we were going. I was just riding. That's usually how it is with us. When you say you gonna come on, go with me, okay, I'm gonna ride. And
Mhm.
he ended up taking me by her house. The first time I'd ever met her, first time she'd ever laid eyes on me. And I remember this to this day. He doesn't remember, but I remember to this day. She said, "You're the first person, the first girl that he's ever brought to meet me. He must gonna marry you." Is what
Oh,
she said. He's gonna marry, and I'm like, okay, like, but we had been together for a long time at that point,
right.
and so I was like, okay, this must be really something about to happen there because I think within a few, I think within a few years, maybe a year or so after that, we decided to get married. But here's the thing, we did not live together at all during those 6 years until the year that we were
Mhm.
actually getting married. So we
Right.
moved in together in January of that year, and we got married in June. So we had only lived together for about, 6 months at the most. Um,
Right.
but I do believe in keeping things to yourself. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've learned over the years that it's best to keep what happens in your home. And
Right.
if you can find, like a group, the circle that you have that are willing to support you and say, no, you need to go back home. I'm sorry y'all arguing, but you need to go back home if you can find those people who are willing to support you in your marriage. Now, mind you, if they recognize things that we don't see, because a lot of times things are hindsight 2020 with women in particular, because we accept things for so long that after a while it
Right.
keeps happening and we're just like, okay, whatever. But truthfully, it's hurting you and you just haven't done anything about it. And so people who are close to you will usually recognize, okay, what's, like your mom, what's going on with you? Why, what's happening? And so people will usually recognize when there's opportunities for you to explore, the good and the bad in your marriage.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you, within your circle, and like you said, everybody was married before. I'm pretty sure they've had their ups and downs. I'm pretty sure they're not gonna preach perfectionism to you
Oh,
in
no.
a marriage, right? So once you learn that you can't take everything to them, like there's some things you need to keep at home, did you then say to yourself, I still want their support, but let me just think about what it is that I'm sharing? And if I'm gonna share it, do I need to tell my husband that I'm gonna share it? Like, do they need to know that you're sharing, things of happening in your marriage with someone
Mm.
else? Or you're like, I don't care. I'm just gonna say what I want. I'm gonna say what I
Right.
want to say. So do you think that there should be some guidelines in terms of what you share with your circle? Even though we know they love us, are there still guidelines that you think you should, go over with your spouse before you share things with them?
So I don't tell my spouse if I'm calling
Mhm,
one of my sisters to talk about something that
mhm,
he did or we
mhm.
that happened between us. But I think he already knows like there are things
Mhm.
that I call them about.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
it's never been to the point where we had that big blow up where
yeah.
I've called them about things. But I just remember like maybe a month or so ago, I called Denise and I was like, let me tell you about your brother-in-law. Tell you what he did. And then so she shared something that Mike had done. And we just laughed and giggled and I was like, okay, so it's normal.
It's normal.
We just go on about our business. Now I didn't tell my husband that I called her, but
Yeah, 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 yeah,
it's little things like that. If it's something, very serious, I've learned just, keep it to myself, let me process it, pray about it.
yeah.
And then my husband and I will talk about it and get through it. Now there may be friends that I have, which, my circle of friends is small as well, that we may talk and bring up things here and there. But even then, I take what they will say with a grain of salt because they
Mhm.
don't see it the everyday in and out,
Right.
all of the things, all of the good things that he does. We're just talking about that one moment where he got on my nerves and,
Mhm,
you know,
mhm, mhm.
so
Yeah, that happens, yeah.
I'm not gonna
Absolutely,
let them influence me in that way. So,
right. I think that's really good. I think being mindful
mhm.
of, who you married and
Mhm.
whether or not, they would be okay with people knowing their business. And most folks, I mean, most spouses, like you said, they know you're going to talk to your mama, they know you're going to talk to your sister about things that are happening. And it's no, I think as long as there's no judgmental aspect that comes
Mhm.
after that. Like if I tell my sister something that she's gonna start treating him a certain way because she knows
Right.
something about him. Those are the types of things I don't want to happen. Um, and I really think people just should be careful about what they share. But I also want to talk about this thing though. So you talk about how you kept them to yourself, but after you get married and you start talking to, people, they could be single women, they could be your coworkers or whatever,
Mhm.
and you start talking about, oh, my husband did this, oh, my husband did that, and he does this and he does that, and oh, girl, he did this. I have a feeling that sometimes you need to be careful about what you share about your husband to people because they might be looking like, oh, her husband doing? Yeah.
Mhm.
Right,
I get where you going.
right, like her husband doing that, like let me try to get a little bit closer to her so I can pick, so I can get to know her husband as well. Like, I feel
Right.
like you gotta be careful about people even the good stuff that
Yeah.
your house
Yeah.
spouse does. I think you need to be careful about what you say. Oh, he bought me this, he bought me that, and girl, he
Mhm.
know how to do this. I think you have to be very careful with who you discuss those things with because then you got people looking in like, oh, I want what she got.
Right.
So even with your circle of friends, like, are you very selective about the things that you say, especially around people that you don't know? Now, I'm not talking about your close friends, but you know how we get in conversation, we start talking about how good God has been, and people want to be a part of how good God has been. I think you just have to be careful. So do you think about, okay, let me not say this, let me keep this to myself? Like, talk to me about that.
Yes. I am very careful because just like you said, people watch and they're watching because they're waiting for it to go left. So they can say, "See,
Mhm.
I knew
Yes,
that was gonna
ma'am.
happen. I knew he wasn't no good. I knew he was gonna do this and she was gonna do that." There is people standing in the
Mhm.
background waiting for that to happen, but then there
Absolutely.
are other people who are standing in the background waiting for that crack that they can think that they can squeeze into and,
Mhm. Yeah.
shimmy their way up
Yes.
to
They
take your spot.
they looking and they creeping. They
Right.
wanna know What's going
So so people, not everybody that applauds or for social media likes your post and
on?
oh, that was nice. That is not all for good, which is why I
Mhm,
don't post
mhm,
many things
mhm,
on any type of social media.
mhm,
There are things that my husband does that I think are very, very sweet, especially like birthdays and things.
mhm,
Last year he surprised me with this nice dinner and this cake and all this stuff. And I did share it, but I'm like, I'm very careful about putting that kind of stuff out there because
uh-huh,
he's doing that for me. That's my blessing.
that's uh-huh. I
What
totally
God
agree.
has for me is for me. So you got to find your own blessing. You got to talk to you and the Lord about that. So,
Yeah, and I
uh,
think it's so funny because my husband, people didn't even realize he was married because
mhm,
he hardly ever posts anything about what we're doing, where we're going.
same as
He
mine.
doesn't do that anyway, but I'm just saying when it comes to what we have, he's very protective over it. And I think, like you
Mhm.
said, if your husband does it, it's because they're very prective over that. Like they don't
Yeah,
want another man admiring their wife. I mean, it's
right.
just not they no,
Yeah.
because they ain't going for it. So they guard their marriages, and so it's
Mhm.
weird in some cases that you'll see them put anything out. But I like the fact you said that that's my blessing. Like that's not for everybody to see.
Right.
So I really like that.
Right.
Um, do you guys um now is is his family here in the area?
So both of his parents have passed away.
Okay,
So I did not get an opportunity to meet either
okay,
one of them. His dad actually passed when my husband was 18. So his dad passed away
okay,
years ago, and then his mom passed away a couple of years before we met.
okay.
But his kids are here. And so, I see them and we communicate and
Mhm.
everything. And then he has it's just him and his sister. There was five of them, but it's just him and his
My
sister.
sister,
And
okay,
so
okay.
she is in like Warner Robins.
Okay. The reason why I asked that question is because I wonder, like, we talk about, and we know that we as women are going to do it, wives are going to do it. We're going to run to our support system and talk about the things that we're experiencing. And I've always wondered, do men do the same? Do they have a circle that they go to? I
Mhm.
oftentimes think that men are neglected in that area because men don't talk to each other about those
Right.
things. But I just wonder if it's a missed opportunity for them to also have, somebody they can run to and say, "Let me tell you what my wife," just, she thinks just having these conversations. I just
Right.
wonder if, there's a system that they can run to. So does he have, a good group of friends or, I sis him and his sister close? Like besides you,
Mhm.
who would he go run to if he just wanted to vent and just kind of get some advice?
So he would probably call his sister, and then he has a cousin that he talks to,
Okay.
that he would talk to a lot when we were dating. I don't think they talk as much,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
we had an issue about that because I was like, "You're not gonna be talking bad about me to your cousin in front of me."
Right.
But on a serious note, though, he'll call his sister. Even when we had our big blow up, he called her and told her the situation, and she, told him that she was disappointed in, actions on his part and everything.
Mhm.
And so they do check in with
Mhm.
each other. But he is very much like he knows a lot of people, but he's still very private.
Mhm.
Because
Excuse
he
me.
really does feel like our marriage is our marriage. And
Mhm.
so, he's my best friend. I'm his best friend. So we got
Mhm.
a problem with each other, then we gotta
Hey, we
we
gonna sit
gotta
there
work it
and look at
out.
each other. Hey, we gotta sit there and look at each other. We live in the
Right.
same house. Like it's not an option. Right. I'm
Right.
glad to hear that though. Because I really think that's important for them as well to have
Mhm.
someone in their circles that they can talk to because we don't always get it right. I mean, we like to think
Right.
that we do, but we don't always get it right. We don't
Oh,
always
yeah, yeah, I've had to learn that a lot
we don't
since
always know
getting
what to say.
married.
We don't always know how to respond to certain things, like the way that he might respond to something is not the way we would do it, or a
Mhm.
lot of things, just the differences. It doesn't mean that anybody's wrong. It just means that we're different in how we
Right.
approach it, and that's okay. And I think as long as we can encourage each other and then to say, hey, I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong. I'm just saying it's different from the way that I
Right.
would do it, and there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's important that we express to them that, hey, my mama taught me well.
Mhm.
No, it's just different from the way that you're doing. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. I just want to do it that way. But being able to, support each other and just have those type of, conversations, I think are truly important. But also being able to go to someone outside of your marriage who may offer you know, no, you were wrong, like his sister did. No, you were wrong. I need
Right.
to go back and fix that. Or like, your mom, no, you can come to me whenever you
Mhm.
need me, but I'm still going to support you in your marriage, whatever that is. I need you to know that I'm going to do what's best for the two of you, not what's good for me,
Right.
do what's the best for the two of you. And so I wanted to talk before we end our conversation. I wanted to talk a little bit about how you've been able to watch, the marriages in your family, how they've developed over the years. Your sister is much older than you. I think your sister, like you said, 30 years. You were,
Mhm.
young when your sister was, your oldest sister got married, and your parents were married for a really long time. Do you draw from their experiences and how they moved with each other, especially your parents, since you were with them the longest? Do
Mhm.
you draw from their experiences and say, I want that type of love, I want that type of marriage? Even though on the outside looking in, we don't know if they were over there fighting or not. Like I said earlier today, they over there fighting. And we don't know that, but
Right.
from the outside looking in, if I could say that I saw my parents, talk it out. I saw my parents love on each other. I saw my parents and I saw my sisters do. Like, do you draw from any of that to help you support how you and your husband work on your marriage?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that my parents' marriage taught me before getting married was, you know, it's not always going to be perfect. It's not going every day is not going to be a good day. There are
Mhm.
going to be times where you may not even like your spouse for
Mhm.
for a few days. So
True.
and I remember when my parents had their 50th wedding anniversary, and
I remember that.
all the kids spoke, and that was something that I said, like, growing up there were days I was like, forget love, do y'all like
They
each
like
other?
each other. Right.
Do y'all even like each other? Um, but that was one of the big things, like, no marriage is not gonna be perfect. Now,
Mhm.
the other thing that I get from my parents is, no, they did not have a lot of people involved in their marriage. My mom had friends, but you would never hear her on the phone talking to her sisters or her friends saying, well, Joe did this, or whatever. My dad never did that. So, we learned that you need to keep it between the two of you all.
Right.
Um, the other thing that's interesting that people might be surprised is that my parents, even though they were married for 58 years, they were not like really an affectionate couple. And
Mhm.
so going
Mhm.
back to earlier when I said I'm not the affectionate one in the relationship, I
Mhm.
think that that's where I get that from. Like they did not kiss each other and have little nicknames and all of
Mhm.
that in front of us. So I think that I kind of got that from them, but
Mhm.
it's really just having that focus on what's important for your marriage and keeping
Mhm.
people out of it, and just
Mhm.
knowing that every day is not going to be a good day.
Mhm.
For my mom, I know she was very committed, dedicated wife.
Mhm.
Um, and
Mhm.
it's funny because one of the first encounters my husband had with my mom and my dad is my dad used to like to sit on the porch a lot. And so he
Yeah.
was he was eating on the porch.
Uh-huh.
And it was a little warm, so it's like gnats and flies. And my mom is sitting out there fanning him
Uh-huh.
while he's eating. And so
Uh-huh.
my husband, with boyfriend at the time, looks at me and he was like, your mama really loves your dad. And I said, and the mold was broken
Right.
when they made her.
Right.
So what I'm telling you is that if you want to eat outside, you're going to have to deal with the fly.
It ain't happening. It ain't happening. You better cover the house.
But but it was very clear that she was a very committed wife, and my dad was committed as well. Like, he took care of the family.
Yeah.
He was the person that we went to if there were issues in the house. He was a leader
Mm-hmm.
in our house, and we had the utmost respect for him
Mm-hmm.
and my mom as well. So
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of the things that I wanted to pattern
Mm-hmm.
our marriage out of, but then also just to be kind of more spontaneous at times, because they were very, like, rigid. They were very
Methodical.
structured.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really see that spontaneity in their marriage. So
Gotcha. Yeah, which is why I'm trying to get my husband to go down here to Bucky's, and I don't know why he don't want to go. Like, we've been sitting in the house all week.
right,
You can go to Bucky's. So
right.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
one time. He's got to
time.
experience it
One
once.
time, just one time. I really appreciate this conversation. It's very enlightening, and I'm so happy to see um that people are taking their vows seriously. I wouldn't expect anything less from you, knowing the cloth that you come from and being able to navigate what that looks like for you and him. Even though
Mhm.
you had examples, it's still yours, right? You still have to
Right.
figure out what works for you guys, and I think it's important that we do cling to each other. I've always felt like there's this special thing that happens when you cling to each other. Like, when you
Mhm.
actually know what that means and you cling to your spouse and you go to them for what you need, and in hopes that no matter what it is, they're gonna support you. And if they don't know the answer, they're gonna try to help you figure out
Right.
what it is. But being able to have somebody there that you can just lean on, I don't think, if you've never been in a relationship or never been married, you don't really know how that feels.
Yeah.
It's a good spot to be in if you can overlook all the bad things that can happen, and there should always be more good than bad. There
Oh
should
yeah.
always be
Yeah.
more pros and cons that happens in your marriage, but you have to work at it. It's
Mhm.
not gonna be something that's just easy all the time, but being able to work at it and then making that conscious decision that you are not going to allow other people, especially those who've never been married a day in their life. You can't tell me nothing about
Yeah.
how to be, married. And so I just
Yeah.
think that it's important for us to not take everybody's opinions so literal when it comes to how we're choosing to live our life. So when it
Yeah.
comes to, and I imagine that you have good friends at church, at work. When it comes to hearing people say, well, girl, I wouldn't do X, Y, and Z, and I don't see how you take that, and I wouldn't do that, and all this and the third, what types of conversations do you think going forward, especially for somebody who wants to be married? And no matter how old you are, just wanting the desire to be with a spouse, what
Mhm.
type of advice would you give someone who, decides to marry later, or who decides to wait because they wanted to explore things about themselves before they venture into getting married? What would you say would be the one thing you've either learned or the advice that you would give someone who, wants to have a husband?
Um, I think if first of all, I think you have to really know who you are as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know, like, what makes you happy, what your triggers are that might make you upset. You really just have to be comfortable with who you are going into a relationship. And I think that was, for me, one of the great things, because, by the time I hit my 30s, I think was when I really felt comfortable with who Angela is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, by the time I hit 40 and still was single,
Yes,
I was very comfortable
very.
with
Yes.
who I am. But there were still a lot of things that I needed to learn about myself. I think that, you just have to really grasp who the essence of you is, before joining with someone else.
Mhm.
Don't put a time limit on it, and don't think that if you don't have a relationship, or you're not married by 25, that there's something wrong with you.
Right, right.
This is one of the messages that I've been trying to express to my daughter, because she is a young woman and she sees other people her age, dating and having all these relationships, and
Mhm.
seeing all this stuff on social media, and I'm like, half that stuff is fake. Them people are not happy.
I'm telling you, they fighting over there. That's what they're doing. Yeah,
But
yeah.
I said, you really got to look at what's going on with your life. You're independent. You go into concerts, you're traveling. And when you're single, that's great, because you don't have to take into consideration what
Mhm.
anybody else wants to do or where they want to go. It's just you. But when you are in a relationship, you do have to compromise. And, maybe I don't want to go to the football game, but he went to the opera last week, so we're going to the football game
Going
this
to the
week.
football game. You're absolutely right.
And
Mhm.
so you have to know that it's what my husband and I say, like, a relationship is about being selfless and not being
Mm.
selfish.
That's
And
good.
sometimes it's hard. It's
Uh-huh.
hard to give up, what you want, or what you want to do. You have to think about the other person.
Mhm.
And also, again, a lot of people think, we hear that term, happy wife, happy life.
Mhm.
Well, my husband quickly told me it's happy spouse, happy house.
Oh, I like that.
Happy spouse, happy house. And
I-
it's true, because you don't want to negate, like, or neglect that
Mhm.
your husband has needs, and that it's all about you.
Yeah.
So we've learned that. So people just have to understand, like, a relationship is not going to be, like I said, skipping down the road and roses and petals and everything is romantic every day and everything is going well. It's not like that. It's gonna challenge you, and you have to truly know if you're committed to stay in it and fight, or if you're just gonna give up and walk away.
Mhm.
I would say to people, if you're not gonna stay in it and fight, then don't take that commitment. Don't make that commitment. But everybody is different, but I would
Mhm.
say don't take that commitment. Also for me, because I did have a young daughter, I was very protective. I didn't want to, like, bring people around her
Right.
as she was growing up,
Mhm.
in and out different people. This year is, it's Uncle Bob. Now we got, Uncle Frank, and
Right.
then we got Uncle
How
Uncle
many
King.
uncles you got?
Got a lot of uncles coming through.
Right.
But
Right.
I was very focused on, making sure that she was good. But that was my choice. I wanted to make sure that nothing disrupted, like, what was going on in her life. So that was something that other, people have to think about as well
Mhm.
when they're getting ready to take that step. So
I like that a lot. I think you do, especially when it comes to girls, children in general, but I think especially when it comes to girls, you have to be very protective of who you bring around them.
right,
And I think it's really smart that if you're going to make a conscious decision to kind of wait it out, that there can't be anything but good things on the other side of that. That patience
right.
that you had to put forth and endure all those lonely
Hmm.
nights sometimes. But look what happened.
Yeah, it was a lot of lonely nights.
Look what happened. You now have, your husband and you guys are building a life together. And I think that's just a beautiful thing. I really do. I love the fact when I see people, wanting to commit to the process. You got
Right.
to commit to the process because it's life. It's not
Hmm.
marriage. It's life. It's life.
Right.
And we're just choosing to do it together. And
Hmm.
to me, that, unit is a strong thing that if we can stick it out, like you said, we can hold on. Those bad times do not last always. They
Yeah.
don't. Like I
And
told
you
my
got to make
husband,
that effort every day too.
you
It's that
do
every day you wake up, you
every
got to make that
single
effort.
day. Every single day. So I'm gonna I promise you I'm gonna end this conversation, but I'm really
Oh no,
myself.
I'm loving it.
Um, like for instance, my husband and I work different schedules now. So I try to explain it to people that, and you could probably relate to this with your nursing schedule. But my husband works from about 10 at night to 7 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And so he goes to work. We've only had a window of about 3 hours every day to see each other, because guess what? I don't see him when I leave to work in the morning. I've
Mm-hmm.
already left for work when he's coming home. And
Right.
so that has been a change for us, because now we have to figure out, okay, you got one day off. What we gonna do in that one day? Or,
Mm-hmm.
we got 3 hours. What can we accomplish in those 3 hours? And sometimes, literally, like you said, when you work at it, it's literally us sitting in there on the couch together watching Judge Judy. And then you have to find moments where you, even if it's just a small fraction of what you could be doing, those small moments make a huge difference in how you, bond and engage with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the fact that we've chosen not to have a lot of people in our space. So when I
Mm-hmm.
talk about keeping others out your marriage, I'm not saying that you can't have family, you can't have friends, you can't have people that want to support you. I am, however, saying that you have to protect your marriage, that it's
Right.
not everybody's business, it's not everybody's space to know what you're doing, how you're doing, who you're doing it with, or the decisions that y'all are making for your family. I don't think that's anybody's business. And I think
Right.
we have to be careful about who we choose to share those things with. And so I really appreciate you having this conversation with me, because one of the things that I have learned, you know, one of the things that I've learned is that I'm a very vocal person when it comes to trying to tell everybody else, but I hardly ever got vocal when it came to my husband and that
Mm-hmm.
communication piece. And so when I realized that it wasn't, I was the one who was wrong, about running to, everybody. I never really talked about what was wrong. I was always talked about, like, what you think about this. I never gave anybody, like, what would you do? What you think about this? I'll
Right.
get your opinion, but I really got a reason why I'm asking. But I think it's important that one key thing that I'm getting out of our conversation is that you definitely have to communicate with each other before
Mm-hmm.
you decide to go and communicate with somebody else. Because the last thing you want is for your husband to not know there's a problem because you haven't told him, but somebody
Right.
coming to him telling him, your wife said, like,
Or mama calling him and saying, Angela called me and said.
hey, it's the last thing you want. You don't want that. So I think this was a really good conversation, Angela, and I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk to me about it. Tell Keith that I'm still in his quote. I love it. Happy spouse, happy spouse, happy house. I love it.
Yes.
I love it,
Yes.
love it, love it, love it. Because you are right. It's both of our homes, it's both of our marriages, it's both of us trying to figure this thing out. So I love it.
Right.
I love it. I love it. But I would love to meet him one day. I think we met in passing, but I would definitely love to meet him one day. So if we ever get the opportunity to physically see each other, once we get over this hump of a thing called COVID and all this stuff, I would
Yeah.
really love to meet him because it seems like you guys are really figuring it out and making it work. And please tell mom and sisters and everybody to watch this podcast, see you talk about how they've contributed to the success of your marriage. I think they would really appreciate knowing that they've been examples for you guys. So tell mom she can be feisty. She can be feisty. She listen. If mama was fanning daddy on the porch, she can be feisty if she want to.
Well,
So I'm
listen,
glad
that's
that
why I have told everybody, because again, daddy was minister, and so mama didn't really like drink.
uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
lately we go out, whatever we ordered, oh, I want one
I
of those
want that.
too. And so my daughter said, I'm concerned because you all are letting grandmama drink. I said, listen, hold on.
Okay. Hold on.
Your grandmother was married and she took care of her husband. She raised her kids. She helped
Yes,
us with her
ma'am.
grandkids.
Yes,
If she wants
ma'am.
to have a
She can have
sangria,
anything she want. Baby, I'm driving. What you want to drink, baby?
exactly.
I got you.
I said,
Right,
because she's going right back home and getting in her little chair.
right. Let
She'll
her have
be
what she
fine.
wants to have. Look, Miss Di has earned her drinks,
Right,
baby. You tell her I said it. And she has earned
right.
every drink that she could possibly want. I
Exactly.
always admired your parents and your mom, and it's a testament to how well we communicate and work, you know, how we talk amongst each other
Hmm.
and really support each other, whether we think we're doing it directly or indirectly. We have been able to support each other all of our lives. And so I
Oh,
really
yeah.
appreciate your friendship. I thank you so much for doing this podcast. This has been so much fun. Like I knew it would be, but this has been so much fun. And so, Angela, I really thank you for joining me today.
Oh, well, you are welcome. And I'm so proud of everything that you have done,
Mhm.
that you
Mhm.
keep coming up with all these new
I'm
ideas. So, like,
trying.
I really admire you for that.
You. Thank you so much. Well, I hope to I do still hope to do the brunch. I just don't know when.
Mhm.
Because you wanted to come. It was a couple people that like, no, you're not doing it. I want to come. So I'm still gonna try to do the brunch. I don't know when. But I
Mhm.
would like to do it. And I would probably also like to do a couples thing. And I'm just trying to visualize what that looks like to get the
Okay, yeah.
husbands and the wives in the same room.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about what that's gonna entail. But until then, until we talk again, please be well, take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. You
All right,
do the
thank you.
same.